All right, there are currently 3 of us here, but StreamYard is telling me there are 0 here. Okay, 126 are here according to StreamYard. That's a little bit better. Quick announcement, Jeff will be here in about 15 minutes. That's Legal Vices for those who don't know the name. And Nate, something came up. He'll be late. Joe is Joe. So Joe will be here when Joe arrives, but just want to let everybody know this is a typical informal thing with a Friday. People can come in, go out. We might even I don't know. We might even have people come in that we weren't expecting to be here. So it's always a challenge. I think I only changed the thumbnail once this morning. And that was to add.
I got that text at 9 a.m. and
yeah. I was like, oh, that's right. John might want to come on here. Let me fire that out. Oh, he does. Good. Let me change the thumbnail. So how are you guys doing?
Good.
Hanging in there.
Good. Well, I have to give a mea culpa. I kept saying at the rate they're going, Alec Baldwin's going to wind up with a traffic ticket. And I was wrong. He's completely off.
I lost the gentleman's bet on the subject. I thought that he would actually do time. I was very much wrong. Nobody in the gentleman's bet thought that it would actually be dropped entirely, but I lost that bet.
Well, it's funny because it did come up, and I know Steve, I was arguing with you guys about it a little bit. I kind of feel like some of what I was arguing may have come into consideration.
Well, I did. Yeah, I did see one report saying that, hey, there's some information that maybe this firearm was modified. Eric, I think you brought up the potential of that. Of course, John talked about last time the destructive test that occurred, as an impact. Now, my personal view was I didn't necessarily see it as the crux, whether he pulled the trigger or not, because that kind of gun has to be manually cocked. Even if it's got an issue with the sear or engagement of the sear that lets it fire without the trigger, you still have to cock it. That's just how that gun is. So I saw that as potentially criminal negligence anyway, because he pointed the firearm at somebody and cocked it. And I don't know whether it's true or not that he didn't have to pull the trigger. I still doubt that one, but it is possible that a gun could be set up to have it happen that way, Eric, like you said. I just find that odd. Is this the first time they used this gun on the set and they found out that when you pull the hammer back, it will go forward without the trigger?
No. It was a perfectly functioning gun. I talked with Seth Kinney, who issued the gun, and I've got it confirmed. He'll be releasing a statement today. And I'll put it out on America's Untold Stories if I get it in time. But yeah, but the problem is that when you have the FBI damaging it, you can't prove this now. It's like, okay, well, the mechanism is broke. Thank you, FBI. Nate and I were talking about this earlier, and he was considering or saying that maybe I was right in Alec sliding on some of this because of the jury opinion. He said, lawyers are busy looking at the law, but then the people who actually decide are the jury. And I do think that there's some factors in there to confuse the jury, like the SAG guidelines literally saying that Dave Halls and the armorer are the people responsible, not Alec Baldwin specifically with it. And that is enough confusion, especially when they have Halls already taken the plea. So they say, okay, he's guilty. He claimed the guilt, and then they're still charging Hannah Reed.
Was I reading an earlier form of the SAG guidelines? Because my understanding was that everybody who handles the weapon is responsible.
It certainly does say that you should never point the firearm at something that because it might be destroyed. I mean, so it does say, I think, what Eric said, because I went and read it after Eric quoted it, because I thought, well, I should read it because he's telling me what it says, and that my assumption of how it would be written is wrong, which Eric was correct. But it does have in the first paragraph of this thing, do not point the gun at something that you're not willing to destroy. And he did that. He pointed it at the victim in this case. So to me, you could have gone forward with this case if you wanted to. I don't really know why they dropped it. And then just because the jury would come back potentially not guilty, does that mean you don't go forward with the case, or you bring it later, which I think is complete crap, because they're not going to find something else out later. That's just trying to soften the blow of having dropped the case, I think. I don't know. I think Nate's right. A jury could look at this and say, well, and as John said, they destroyed the gun in the test. How can you really prove it that he pulled the trigger? I'm not going to hold him responsible if he didn't pull the trigger. It wouldn't be his fault if the gun's broken, blah, 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 and all that, and let the guy go. But I think if the DA had wanted to proceed, they certainly could have, because there's no question but that he pulled that firearm out, cocked it while it was pointed at her, whether he pulled the trigger or not. And under even the SAG guidelines, he's not supposed to do that.
Yeah, yes and no, though, because I can tell you right now that whole principle in the SAG guidelines is bullshit. And I'll tell you why. If that's the case, The Deer Hunter never was made into a movie. There's 1,000 movies where I can prove on screen that there's a gun pointing at their head. It's an actual gun. Did they mean to kill themselves? Obviously John Eric Hexum, that was a tragedy that happened, but these SAG lines, even that, it's so much vagary in there, and anybody with any lick of sense will say, well, I've seen them point a gun at them. My show partner, Mark Robert, pointed a gun at his co-host, or a co-star in a movie while they were filming. Yes, you can cheat some, but this is where it's all so weird. This is Hollywood circumstances and not reality, and I feel like it throws some things off.
Well, reading the guideline, it says if it is absolutely necessary to do so on camera, meaning pointing a firearm at somebody, reading it right now, consult the property master. So Eric, you're right. I mean, obviously they have occasions where, the gun's going to be pointed directly at somebody. You're supposed to go through another procedure. Now, do they do that or not do it? I don't have any idea. I think the guideline goes for what you said, which is the principal responsibility of the firearm safety is not on him. But I just don't read it to say, well, we have to let this guy go because of this guideline. When it says don't point the gun at somebody unless you're willing to destroy something. And if you have to point it at somebody, you have to go back to the property master. So they knew all this when they brought the case. I mean, this guideline, Eric, that you brought up earlier, it's not like the DA didn't know it existed. So what the hell did they bring the case for?
Well, dude, they put the enhancement charge on, which got created after the incident happened. So obviously they weren't reading their own freaking laws. So why would they bother with the SAG guidelines?
Because it's a crap show.
Is why do the SAG guidelines actually matter in the first place? They're not law. Those are. I think
in terms of reasonableness,
right? Because you have standards on the set. I think they do matter, because when you're filming,
reasonableness exists outside of whatever a union decides to determine for its particular members. Reasonableness is a legal concept. It is not.
But is it workplace safety? Is it workplace safety of the law? It's a weird one. Joe, go ahead. You're dying. Go, jump.
Reasonableness can have two standards. They can have a reasonable man standard. You can have a reasonable in the industry kind of standard. And I don't know if you can apply in a criminal charge. I don't do criminal defense. You probably know better than I would, Southern. Oh, you do civil law, so
yeah,
right? Yeah. But I'm saying is, I'm not sure if in criminal law, if you're talking about when you're using the word reasonableness, the law does look at it sometimes as objectively, what would any reasonable person do in that circumstance? And then you can look at what the reasonable person, given that particular, the circumstances and who that person is and the situation that they're in, what a reasonable person would do. And either of them philosophically make sense, but the question is how the criminal law uses that word reasonable, and that's all the difference in the world as to whether or not he's acting reasonably. Because if we look at people in his industry, then SAG guidelines certainly are the best place to look. If we're looking at reasonable man standards, well, in that case, someone could, the jury could find that a reasonable man would ignore those SAG guidelines and understand that the law is that you got to, check your gun and take your reasonable precautions.
But to me, none of those things control the DA's decision to drop the case right now, because what you're talking about, Joe, that existed before they brought the case, when they brought the case, and now all of a sudden they're dropping the case. Now, I think
hold on, which one though? Because keep in mind, you had the DA who didn't want to take the case, so she brought in Andrea Reeb, who got booted or removed herself because she was going to get kicked. So now there's two more prosecutors. So which one is making the decision? I think that's a factor. You could have, oh, well, I have to press charges because of the political ramifications, whatever. I have Andrew Reeb. She's saying how it should go or whatever they conspire. Then the new prosecutors come in. They say, look, this is a disaster. We have no time. We've got one guy who pleaded and we can nail the girl. Let's boot Alec Baldwin and pick on the armor. And I always thought that Hannah was going to fall. I just didn't know if more would go with her. And I'm curious, but I do think that's a factor. What do you guys think about the changing of the guard in terms of the prosecution and decision making?
Oh, it's definitely going to affect the decision making and how things are going to work. I mean, that's unquestionable. I mean, that's not a legal question. That's like just what would common sense dictate is going to happen when you're changing, personalities at the top. To me, look, I personally, Alec Baldwin sickens me. He makes me nauseous. I can't stand the guy. I think he's a political hack. I think he's a very overrated actor, and I think he's a narcissist and a terrible human being. That being said, I'm not that, from a legal perspective, I asked myself, if he was not Alec Baldwin, but just Joe Smith, and he had done this here, would I feel like that a DA should be spending 2 weeks on a preliminary hearing and then start going through a whole lengthy trial and this entire thing to try and hope that if you get a conviction, you get a maximum sentence of what, a year? And that even if you get that maximum sentence of a year, I think a judge has discretion to basically let you out for time served if it was 2 days and community service and that sort of thing. So you're basically looking at investing a month of DA's time, and our time is our only real. Abraham Lincoln said, only real resource a lawyer has is their time. The DA has limited resources in that perspective. I understand we say unlimited for the government, but
no, they actually had to request a special budget for it. And I think that's part of why they did charge, is because she requested the money to charge up to 4 people, got the budget. So I think she had to come up with charges because she got the money.
That could explain why you got the charges. Also, if you have to justify a budget, that could be a reason that you're pressing charges that you may not ultimately legally stick. My point is, if he wasn't Alec Baldwin, I would say, you know what? The law in New Mexico before they had this gun enhancement charge sucked. Thank God they fixed it. But that's what the law was at the time this thing happened. And I can understand a DA saying, I'm not going to invest a month and a half of my office's resources toward trying to get a maybe possible, hopefully if we win, conviction of up to like a year in prison. So that's why, as much as as he disgusts me, I have to recognize, if it was a regular person, we probably would not feel this outrage. Now, I understand there's a thing to say, like, look, we have to, since this story has gotten such national attention, maybe that's a reason to push it further to show that the law matters. I'm just saying, like, it doesn't, I just feel like I don't want my personal dislike for the guy to sort of judge and say, is there really an unfair bias being shown towards elites here or whatever? And I think it's possible. It's very easy for my personal bias to be ginned up here. And I do have to recognize that if it was a Joe Smith, I'd be like, wow, this really sucked. But like, I understand why the DA doesn't really want to invest this much effort for such little return.
Also on that note, John, what do you think about the possibilities too that New Mexico is very dependent on film industry and money, and doesn't necessarily want to get the reputation that, okay, if something goes wrong, you're screwed in New Mexico. So we're going to go to Montana and we're going to go to Nevada to do our filming. Do you think that the industry risk and the money risk might factor into, if you think the case is kind of weak?
I don't think that really should factor into
there should, and
criminal prosecution aspect. I mean, obviously, again, the district attorney is an elected representative, and there are many states that have special carve-outs. I mean, Georgia is a great example where they offer massive tax breaks for people that film in their jurisdiction. I don't think that should have. I would find it particularly unpleasant to believe that the death of a human being is being superseded by potentially people not wanting to film in that state anymore.
Because, it happens every day, though. I mean, let's be honest. Money talks, okay? And who the human being is and how much money is involved is always going to be a factor. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is, and we know that. But at the same time, I mean, if that really is, you're asking me to look into somebody's heart, and I don't know that I have the qualifications to do that.
Okay, well, fair enough. Actually, I got a question here from David Sorensen at some point. But Joe, why does that apply to Alec Baldwin and not Hannah Gutierrez-Reed?
Well, these are fair questions. That's a fair question. I mean, I don't know what type of counsel Hannah Gutierrez. She's a completely, even though it's one incident, she's from a legal perspective in a completely different situation. So
partly because she's the expert, I think.
Because she's
allegedly.
Yeah, so even though it's obviously the
she
same
had the title
incident of death, and I know it seems counterintuitive to say that the person who pulled the trigger should be less culpable than someone who didn't pull the trigger. I understand that does seem
right.
Counterintuitive, but her expertise and her role here, it changes as far as how easy it is for her to be deemed culpable, especially in the context of the SAG guidelines and all these other things.
Well,
so
if we're going to talk about stuff that's going on behind the scenes, so to speak, I mean, whomever, and I actually don't know what firm Baldwin hired, I imagine that it was one with significant political ties in the community and had the ability to pull some strings. And this is what happens when you're able to hire firms of that kind of capacity, particularly in relatively small jurisdictions.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Steve? You're quiet and pensive.
Well, I was reading some of the comments, but also I was trying to remember, which Eric, you may know, who was likely the person who brought the live ammo there, because as much as I kind of agree with with what Joe is saying about Alec Baldwin in terms of Alec Baldwin, he is an actor, and they do hire experts to provide them with various things, cars, helicopters, guns, or whatever. And in real life, those people depend on those people a lot to make sure that the situation is safe. That's why, these other people are not paid to be on the screen. They're paid to do their jobs. And so some of the armorer people certainly failed in that, in allowing live ammo to be there, and also in giving him a gun that had live ammo in it. So that's terrible. That is terrible. And whatever reasons he's got his charges dropped here doesn't, to me, control whether, say, she should have had her charges dropped or somebody else should. Everything is individual to look at, and whoever delivered the live ammo there and or put it in the firearm.
Well, she put it in the firearm. That's the worst actor
proven to me. That's the worst actor in this thing to me.
But it's her job to load it. So okay, I just want to be clear.
Exactly.
She did in fact load those rounds in there. I'm not saying that she brought it.
Right.
We don't know who brought it, but she did definitively load the weapon. No, we don't know how it got on the set, and
we have a fairly decent idea.
No, we don't, because they haven't charged it.
That was the only day that an executive of the company providing the prop ammo was actually physically on the set.
No.
So I have some questions there.
Okay. One, Sarah Zachary represented Seth Kinney's company, and it was there, but there were three people who provided ammunition to the set, and that was Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, Seth Kinney with his prop company, and a third individual as well that were supplying dummy rounds. Now, Seth Kinney doesn't deal with any ammo. I don't think the other guy actually deals with ammo either. And I don't know the deal on what happened with Hannah Reed on that. So it's a very confusing situation.
Well,
as far as who.
I went back, Eric, and read the probable cause affidavit after we talked about this last time. And it's my understanding from that there was also a live round recovered from the belt Baldwin had, where you put
multiple. There was, I think 5 or 7 stray rounds.
And so they were mixed in with, so I mean, the
Jensen
whole thing is a disaster.
Somebody did that. Yeah. Like, that doesn't happen by accident.
Well, yeah, but we don't know who. Okay, as far as his gun belt, that could have been Hannah Gutierrez-Reed or Sarah Zachary or Nicole, the assistant, because they weren't doing it, but they were loading, like the gun belts and that stuff just sitting there on the side. So don't know who actually put that in there. I totally agree. I want to know how the hell the live rounds got on the set. What is the source?
Okay,
Nobody's
Korea has
answering
really
that.
lax extradition laws. I did it.
Okay, fair enough. Problem solved. Next subject. Okay, let's go. How are you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing really great. Hi, everybody.
Good to
Great
see you,
to
Jeff.
see-
I don't know. Have we been on together before?
Seriously, John? We've streamed
We have.
together.
That's so
We've streamed
freaking
trials
rude.
together.
That is so rude.
Jesus.
He meant today,
God.
though. Just
That's
today.
not rude. I just like,
I can't take you anywhere.
Good Lord. Holy crap.
yeah, I can't take you out to lunch.
Yeah, that's
Seriously.
true.
Well, that
It's
would be
like
a
those
stretch.
asshole clients you have to introduce yourself to 5 times and they still ask who you are.
Yeah,
John.
All right, everybody go hate me. That's
all
fine.
right.
Okay,
Wow.
Seriously.
he's the villain of the program.
Yeah.
John, legal
Pretty much.
vaxes, legal vaxes. This is John.
Legal vaccines.
Oh, sorry. I was
That's why I grew like the Disney villain beard.
Oh, good Lord. All right. So
Wow.
on that note, do you have any thoughts on the case, Jeff?
Oh yeah, and I'm going to unleash them in about 8 hours from now. That's just politics, man. Just politics. That's all there is to that. And I will not be swayed from that opinion. That is a 100% political decision.
Well, I think politics are definitely there, but can that decision be justified in any way?
No. You can't. If there was ever a first-year law school walk you through the elements of negligent manslaughter, that is it. There is no justifiable way on planet Earth to justify dropping those charges. None. Zero.
Jeff, let me put it this way. If you were a law professor and you gave this hypothetical and the list of the statutes and they said no charges.
I'd throw them out of law school. I'd fucking
you.
give them an. Oh, sorry. I'd intercourse them an F, and I would throw them out of law school. I would just like say intercourse you and kick them out of law school. There is no justifiable legal reason for dropping these charges. None.
Cool. And folks, we just spoiled the episode for tonight
No.
in 8 hours.
I think he has some more details to unleash. That's what I think.
No, that's
he
pretty
might.
much it. I'm just going to repeat it. 'Cause that's all I've been repeating all day long. It's insanity. But they're still keeping Hannah Gutierrez because it's like it doesn't really matter because she was the armor. It doesn't matter that and this whole gun was modified thing.
No, it wasn't modified.
Not buying that for
No, that's-
5 seconds.
It was not.
How
I
can,
know that.
you possibly know that when it was destroyed by the testing process?
Yeah, well, and it apparently wasn't modified in any significant way because they couldn't get it to do what he said it did. This is, I mean,
That's the. I'll admit that while I was saying I understand where the DA is coming from here, I'm not quite as hardline as Jeff is over here. I that's the part that makes it so frustrating is that he's such a clear, such a blatant liar. That's why I think it rips at our souls when we see this. It's so obvious how he's sitting there swearing that he never pulled the trigger when we know that's a lie.
I don't believe that.
Swearing, and you know, and that the gun and telling us about these modifications and all these one lie after another, and he's lying to cover up the fact that he was completely negligent in this woman's death, and we're seeing him dance scot-free. It's those blatant lies to our face that makes us feel particularly aggravated when we look at the fact that he's not going to face any criminal
it's
repercussions.
hubris and arrogance.
That is a good question.
He's
though.
an a-hole. That's what,
if
it
he
is.
was? What if he was like Dave Halls, who shut his mouth from day one? The lawyer released, whatever statement. You haven't heard a peep. Nothing from Dave Halls. If Alec Baldwin had done that and never said anything, never did any interview, anything else, would that change your opinion at all on the situation?
Yes, honestly, it would. It's I don't know what happened on set that day. Obviously, something was wrong with the weapon. I'm sorry that it occurred, and then you shut the hell up for the rest of it. I would have a very different opinion.
You cop the plea. You take a 6-month plea in abeyance. You disappear for a year or two. Spend time with your family or whatever euphemism you want to say, and then slowly make your comeback.
But I knew that this was going to happen the second they started refilming in another state.
Well, no, that's exactly it. because and that was Alec Baldwin and the production company's insidious plan to get this result. You make this guy the executive producer as the major part of the settlement agreement, and if their lead guy is on trial and can't film, the film doesn't go forward, the family doesn't make money. This is we have to let him off the hook. We have to let the film be made so that the family can get their money from whatever points agreement they made in the settlement.
Yeah, you know what? That is like you said, it's insidious, because the whole point is if we don't keep on with the project, then
the family
we
doesn't
don't have
get
money to actually help the family.
Is that insidious on Baldwin's part, or is it on the
Yeah.
family's part? Because remember, Matthew Hutchins is the one who took on, I'll be executive producer.
I don't
mean,
think
he agreed to this.
appreciated it. Yeah.
What
What
choice did he have from a contractual perspective? You need to find some sort of other attachment.
No, he got cash. Alec Baldwin has 100 million plus. He's got multiple
he
estates.
has that, but he's not going to pay it.
But that's part of the insidiousness of this. If you look at Alec Baldwin's contract with, his production company's contract with the main production company, he has the most amazing indemnification agreement you've ever. His indemnification clause is basically if I am liable for anything for any reason whatsoever, regardless of intention or negligence, I will be covered by the primary producing company on this. He personally and his production company is not going to spend a dime on this settlement.
Well, unless they can, from what I understand,
indemnified.
Yes or no. Okay, I'm not the lawyer, but from what I understand, that contract's only valid if there's no negligence. I mean, you can pierce that contract.
There was no negligence clause in it. It was for any liability of any reason whatsoever, regardless of negligence or intent. It was insane.
At that point, you literally have to argue against public policy, which we all know how far that goes. I mean, that's the only argument that you have against a clause like that.
I don't know. I mean, it's I'm not a contract lawyer, so it's hard for me to say. But from what I understand, contracts can be null and void if there's malfeasance, etc. Are you going to say that contract would hold up if he was convicted?
Well, it's a commercial agreement between his production company and the main production company. They can agree to whatever terms they want to agree between themselves on a commercial basis. And I don't know how he convinced them to do that.
I'll put it this way. If he were convicted, that would be useful evidence in the civil trial.
Useful evidence. I'll give you that.
Here's a good question. Who's planning to see the movie?
I'm not.
Nah.
No.
I think the family does have a cut of the proceeds, though.
Yeah,
because they're the executive producer. They've probably got a substantial cut.
Oh, yes.
Which is why this has to be made, which is why they have to drop the charges so the star actor can go film the stupid movie.
Here's the weird part about it all. This was Alec Baldwin's dream project, believe it or not. He was planning for this to be his Unforgiven. I'm not kidding. No, I'm not kidding. And if you go look at his contract, you're talking about the indemnification. Go look at his salary for the movie.
He like ended up, it was like 80,000 or something, wasn't it?
Right. This is an A-list actor.
Yeah.
I don't care how you put it. We were shocked when we found out how much he was actually getting paid, because we were like, hey, this movie's budgeted for 8 million. 2 of those million is in his pocket. That harms him. And then we found out that it's actually a passion project of his. And like I said, this is why
was it 80? I remember the number 80,000. Is that what his salary was?
No, I think it was a little more than that, but it was probably closer to 200,000. But it was it's not nominal
money. Yeah.
Oh hell no! It was nominal money. And anyway, he made less money than a couple of the producers that were involved. Like I think his agent was making more money than he was.
Oh, he wanted this to be his Unforgiven. That just makes me just.
Well, you know what? If he was quiet about it and not such an ass, you would almost feel bad. You'd be like,
and if he was Gene Hackman and had Sharon Stone working with him, then it might be different.
Well, okay. I'm not a fan, and he pisses me off too, but Alec Baldwin is a talented actor. That is true. He's not a great Trump, but he's a good actor.
I think he stopped being a good actor right about the time that The Shadow came out.
Let's say competence. Maybe
he's the same in every role. He's he has less range than Ricky Ricardo singing.
Yeah,
It's
that's
all
not-
Babalu. Every act, every role is Babalu. Babalu.
This is the problem I have when it comes to
Lucy.
it's like, at what points are you an actor or are you just playing yourself in a different role? So I don't know that I necessarily think that he has that range.
All right, I don't know, but if we're going into Ricky Ricardo, we've played this subject out on this show, so it's time to move on
Thanks
to
for
something
ruining
else.
it, Joe.
I'm telling you, my God.
Once again, Joe has ruined a perfectly great conversation. Thank you, Father Kids. Thanks,
Did you see
Dad.
what he did? Did you see that? Did you see what he did?
Yes, exactly. Oh my God. Okay, so I saw a headline coming through earlier. I'm not sure the deal, that a CIA operative or somebody involved, somebody in Intel stated that Biden coordinated with them to get the signatories about the Hunter Biden laptop. Did any of you see this story?
Yeah.
So I saw the story, and I believe it was in a congressional hearing that I watched briefly in the back of my mind, but it's not great.
Well, somebody fill us in. Steve.
What I saw was just what you just said. I just saw a quick blurb about it with somebody, acting CIA something or the other, said that they were basically solicited by Blinken, I think, to come out against that. And of course, that was all crap and false. But
in October of 2020, something happened that we can't say on YouTube. Something happened in November 2020. I don't remember what it was, but something happened, and this seemed to be just about a month before that happening, and it's very odd.
it's part of our pure democracy that we like to export via drone strike. So it's just the clean, fresh, honest democracy that every American treasures so much, that we all want total, transparent information, accurate no matter what the cost to our own personal ideology. We all want that, right? So these people stood up, these Intel officials did their duty and told you something was false that absolutely was true, so they could skew an election the way they wanted it to go, because that's what the founding fathers intended.
Allegedly.
Wow, we have the one Hunter Biden fan in the audience. Really?
Is there somebody here obsessed with Hunter? I'm not obsessed with the guy.
I mean, it's like
Hunter's
I don't care
obsessed
about
with
Hunter.
Hunter.
I don't care about Hunter's drug habits.
It's pretty funny for anyone to say that, given the fact that 3 years after Trump's term is over, I'm still hearing stories about Jared and Ivanka. Like, this is the sitting president's crazy, corrupt, getting paid by
drug addict.
That's the problem. I don't care about the drugs. Let me clarify. Hold on, because that's important. I don't care about his
money
drugs
from
I don't
foreign
care about that.
governments because his father is such a
Boom.
powerful person and his father is getting a cut of it. That's not obsession. That's actually examining ongoing corruption that we're dealing with today.
Yes.
So that's not obsession. That's dealing with, what are we dealing with?
I imagine you all have seen the IRS whistleblower and what's going on with Merrick Garland potentially having perjured himself in front of Congress. I mean, this is a much broader problem, if you want to put it that way, in our government. And I don't think that it is even necessarily political to try and figure out how the hell is this happening.
I agree. The corruption, okay, but I just want to clarify. The corruption is what's important. His drug problems, irrelevant, unless he was stealing from the government to pay for the drugs, that's fine. But I don't care about his drug habits. I don't care about his womanizing. I don't care about any of that. I do care about being paid by foreign governments for favors and things like that. That is the only part that counts. And I always want to stress that, because people go right into it. It's like, oh, you're just picking on him for his lifestyle. I don't care about his lifestyle. I care about the corruption. That is what counts.
Well, you also could have, if you were the Hunter defender, said, okay, that's his laptop. He's had a sleazy lifestyle. Look at his upbringing. Everybody ought to feel sorry for the guy. None of it matters. You could have done that if it's not supposed to matter. But instead, what they said was it was all a lie. It was all fake. And that's the issue I have the problem with, is people trading on their past or current official positions in the United States government to tell people something wasn't real, that it was real, while they're yelling at you about how they believe in science and misinformation. I mean, this is like when I grew up, Pravda was the propaganda, and that has that virus spread over here. Okay, that's the real COVID-19 to me, is that the level of deceit totally swamped into the government is just limitless. Like John said, it's not even a political thing. I would just prefer that there be some one iota of integrity from somebody in Washington, D.C. But I think if there were, that person would be struck by lightning, reverse lightning right away. I mean, I don't know that it exists there.
We literally saw that happen, and we're seeing it happen again. I mean, this is the one thing that drives me a little bit nuts is, in fairness, it really is not political, because I think that the intelligence community absolutely hamstrung Trump for 4 years. And I think we're now seeing the intelligence community hamstrung Biden, because they have their own interests that are totally separate from electoral politics and representing the people.
Jeff, you're quiet on this.
Well, they're saying everything that I was going to say. It's just.
You can reiterate it. It would help my ego.
John Robine is correct.
I could sing Babalu again if you want.
You can. No,
We'll go right to super chats. It's their case of law of state versus state. What? Specifically, a state accusing the other state's new legislation with illegally revoking the what? I don't quite know where this fits into the conversation here. I do appreciate the super chat, but I don't quite understand that.
Is there case law? I think it's just a general question. Is there case law?
Oh, THERE. Okay, sorry. It's okay. Sorry, it threw me off.
There. Oh yeah.
Like sanctuary states and things like that.
A state versus state, specifically state accusing the other state's new legislation with illegally revoking the rights of parents. Oh, so I know what this is about. I think I know what this is about. Have you heard
one
about
state sue another state for their state laws regarding parenthood?
The answer is probably no, because that's why we have federalism, and every state has their own jurisdiction. So I don't think that. I don't think that.
Are you thinking that's a Florida DeSantis thing?
It could be. Look, it could apply. It could apply in either direction if you think about it. It could apply with respect to, let's say, California wants to sue Florida for their Stop Grooming Our Kids bill act, and then you could apply it to Washington's SB 5599, which is a relatively new development, wherein they basically say that any gender affirming surgery is considered protective health services, and that if a child runs away from home to an agency and they're seeking any form of protective health services, that they can basically get that help without the parents' assistance, and that they basically can be kept away from the parents long enough to get their protective health services.
This is good. This is getting. I feel like they used. We'll just say Roe v. Wade, but that subject as a precursor for this, because there were underage girls that were going over state lines to have a medical procedure take place, and that is a good. But that's a good question. That would seem to be where the Supreme Court would have to step in, because you have states kind of dancing on each other's rights.
I don't see why a state would have a right to say anything about that.
Yeah,
I don't see why Florida would have a right to say that to Washington. You can't pass this because it's violating the kid.
But no, in your example, which I think is where they were going, how is that not literally by doctrinal rules? Basically, the state kidnapping children from their parents.
Well, because you have parent consent laws. So, does that mean there is no longer a parental consent? Well, that's great. Then we don't have to worry if the child consents to whatever they want, and this is where they're heading. That if they consent to anything, and that's why they want it. So we've got a problem.
And call me a Judge Bork follower. A minor cannot consent to anything.
Right. So if a minor crosses the state lines and the state line, so who is consenting for that minor if they go to another state and the parents don't know about it? There's a problem, in my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer, but I don't understand how this could be And I would say, I would feel that the state's violating it. Steve, you're the expert on this, right?
I doubt it, but I'm saying one thing I haven't done, which is useful when you talk about these things, is actually read it. So I don't know what these proposed bills are, or laws or whatever. And like, is it neither parent has to consent or some guardian or whatever, or there has to be, you know, medical determination that the child is in imminent need? You know, they have lots of lawyers in every state, and they're going to try and write it up some way that it would pass. And what I'm thinking of is, I mean, typically, you know, say North Carolina might have an age of consent for sexual relations of this level age. And then you go to South Carolina and it's a little higher or lower or whatever, and your kid goes across state lines and does something you wish they hadn't done. You can't complain that other state's law is different than your own state, that you have to respect each state's law within certain parameters, but then states have to respect each other's judgments and rulings and things. So it probably depends. And I hate to say it, I did it. I already said it. I said it depends.
But
it depends on what it says.
Isn't that part of why the Supreme Court would have to step in, though? Because the states are dancing with each other. I mean, that's why there's legalized gay marriage, right?
It's the same thing with the international laws. I mean, I have to tell clients all the time. You get the people, you know, Canadians or whatnot, that come and they smuggle their marijuana. And in Korea, drugs are drugs are drugs are drugs. From the courts and the legal point of view in Korea, there's about this much difference between marijuana and crack cocaine. Just drugs are drugs.
Like Singapore. Ooh.
Yeah. And you bring them in here, and like they say, well, you have to make this defense that is.
When you say there's this much difference between marijuana and crack cocaine, I'm thinking I got to go to Jeff's parties.
Yeah. So. Yeah, there ain't none of that going on here. I like living here, and I like my job, and I like my freedom. But it's what I have to tell them. There's like, it's not illegal in Canada. It's like, guess where you're not? You're not in Canada.
Can I ask the panel a genuine question? What is the difference between these sorts of harboring laws and laws essentially, I guess, abolishing human trafficking rules? Genuine question. I mean, how is this essentially harboring a humanly trafficked subject?
Well, I don't know enough about the trafficking.
Well, from an expert, let me tell you.
Well, this is where it's going, and that's what I'm talking about. The reason why there are people, and not all people, but a lot of people want it to be where a child can consent on their gender, meaning they can consent on other things that we believe that maps. Well, somebody says that they belong elsewhere. But there are individuals who will take advantage of a child's consent. And if you, and I'm sorry, a slippery slope is a fallacy unless you're sliding down the hill.
But are we not sliding down the hill right now?
It's very simple. Any child who's considering getting this type of surgery is in a great deal of pain. And we should feel terrible for a child who's.
I didn't say they shouldn't be, or that they wouldn't be, and I completely agree with you.
Well, if I could just finish the thought, it's they're in a great deal of pain, a tremendous amount of pain that should draw our sympathy. The problem is that none of these remedies are doing anything to address that pain. It's not addressing the pain. Whether you give them chemicals or surgery or anything, it's not addressing the deep pain that they feel inside. It's not making them a happy person.
And statistically, it doesn't change the.
And it makes it more likely that they will endure greater pain as they get older. So you're taking a child who's vulnerable and in pain, telling them this will make you feel better, which invariably does not make them feel better. And then we're just making it more likely that they're going to be in greater pain down the road. And now Washington State is saying we don't want to let the parents stop anyone who wants to inflict this greater pain on them. It is a terrible tragedy that that's where our society has devolved to. But that's what we're dealing with at this point. It's terrible. I feel very badly for any child, and sadly, a lot of this pain is inflicted by social contagion and different programs that are designed to put the child into pain. And then inflict greater and greater pain. And these are innocent children who get confused and they're put in pain, and they're invariably so if they become social outcasts. If they're not already social outcasts beforehand, most of them are bullied. and have all sorts of other issues with respect to finding their place in society, in their respective society, and they're a great deal of pain, you know, and anyway, and what makes me really upset, what gets me so upset is that when you express outrage over what the state is doing here, people take a position that the right doesn't have sympathy for children. How do you not feel bad for them? And they intentionally blur the issue and ignore the fact that no, this is genuine compassion and concern for what is happening to these children. No one wants these children to be in the pain that they're in. It's terrible, terrible pain. And the fact that this pain is first inflicted in the social contagion level and then allowed to be enhanced by making permanent changes to them before they have any possible way. There's zero possible way they have any comprehension of the magnitude of impact they're having on their lives. And we won't let them get a tattoo because it's such a serious decision. You won't let them have a cigarette because it's such a serious concession. It's going to impact on them. We won't let them drink. We won't let them do anything. But if they literally want to cut off their own body parts or inhibit their ability to grow into a natural, healthy, happy human being, well, in that case, you're miserable. And even though there's no evidence at all, it's going to make you feel better. We're going to allow you to do this, and we're going to keep your parents away from helping you make such a terribly important change in your life. It's astonishing. It's evil. It's really evil.
Right.
I'm sorry to be a downer, but that's the reality of the situation that people need to appreciate as to what this really
absolutely
is
correct.
like.
I can't add anything really significantly to that.
I want to point this out too.
To point out real quickly that even when these sorts of reaffirming therapies are provided, it does not lower the self-deletion rate. It does not seem to have a significant impact on a beneficial aspect of somebody's lives. And when alternatives of, talk therapy or even without outside care, most of these individuals grow out of it. And
there's a term called tomboy that's over centuries old, and it was deliberately used because many girls are more masculine as a child. They typically are stronger, faster, run more, they're tougher, they beat up the boys half the time.
Right.
And then all of a sudden puberty hits and boom, they turn into a whole nother person. It's normal progression. I do want to bring this up. Hold on really quickly, because this is going to be a pushback I'm not surprised to see. We're concerned about all children, men and women. I don't believe in child brides either. I have a problem with that.
Legal age of consent for women will vary by the jurisdiction.
Yeah.
That's the short answer. This is the simplest answer.
Yeah.
Morally, where do you stand?
Look, age of consent for a child. Yeah, for a child is basically it's at 17 in New York, and other jurisdictions is 18, and some is 16. I mean, I don't understand what the point of the question is.
Well, so a lot of people.
I think it's just inquiry.
No, there are places where a 13-year-old can get pregnant and wind up getting married with the parents signing off or whatever that is, and they're saying don't be a hypocrite because that tends to be a lot of times on the right.
That's not consent. That's with the parents signing off.
I understand that.
And they're never gender specific, I don't think, anymore. Any of these consent laws, are they?
Well, that's part of it. There are no genders,
All I'm trying to point out is they like to say that it's hypocrisy.
Yes.
That people on the right are okay with child brides, but they're not okay with transgender. I'm saying I'm not okay with either.
Yeah, I think that's kind of creepy. I think it's really kind of creepy.
I think it's wrong.
So
that's just, a straw argument where somebody's trying to imagine. I mean, nothing Joe said had anything to do with saying, also, I like young kids getting pregnant and married. So that was just somebody imagining that into what he was saying so they could have a dunk, because everything he said actually came out of his mouth was obviously correct. You wouldn't have a 14-year-old kid, any gender, any universe you want to put them, who's anorexic, and then say, let's call them fatty because that they think they're fat. So let's call them fat and let's give them more liposuction and Ozempic or whatever that drug is. Everybody, and let's make them even skinnier because they think they're fat. They're anorexic, but they think they're fat, and we have to affirm that. We have to affirm that. That's
I think what Eric was saying is true about tomboys and hitting puberty and whatnot. And we have this main case of the the trans girl, what's her name? Jazz, what's her name? That she transitioned as a minor, and her mother is continuing to press this.
I think that actually Florida should press charges against them.
Yeah, here's it's like Jazzy. I can't think of her last name, but she's to the point now where she's been doing all of this. She's transitioned as a minor to a girl, and now she says she doesn't feel comfortable in her body. She's interested in girls, and it's like, okay, so basically, it sounds like you should have just left her the way she was and let her make the decision. Once you hit 18, I don't give a crap.
So it gets, and I have to be very careful with how I phrase this because of YouTube.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Jazz Jennings, that's who it was. Yeah.
There was I don't know if it was an interview or some sort of TLC show or what the hell it was, but the mother.
Yeah, that's her, Jazz Jennings. Yeah.
Yeah. While she was asleep, she would insert the dilator.
Yeah, the speculum to keep
make sure that it did not revert and close. And you're literally saying you are forcibly keeping open a wound of your child because of
yeah, we get the point.
There's so much that I get.
No, I mean, how deeply we gotta go? We get the point. Speculum. Oh, got it.
But that's the thing is, it's like now she's an adult and she doesn't feel comfortable in her female body, and she's now interested in girls.
Right. Shocking.
Why don't we just wait? Yeah, why don't we just wait? I mean, when I was a kid, the tomboys were the ones we wanted to hang out with because they'd play with the snakes, pick up the lizards, ride the bikes, punch you in the face, and do all that other stuff. But they were also the ones we asked to prom when you grew up.
Let me go through some super chats. That'll cheer me up. IWG, there's a reason why George Washington preferred amateur all volunteer spies with an interest in their community. Any form otherwise goes mercenary, or intelligence community goes mercenary. I agree. That makes sense. But then you know what? You could almost counter that same argument about if somebody is so dedicated to their cause, they could be problematic. I'm going to go to Steve, who's always quiet. Like there's the example that an expert witness who goes around and works for free may not be the best expert witness versus a professional who's just paid to give a professional opinion, that person may be acting in a manner that is outside of law or whatever. I don't know if I'm saying it right.
I think it's more to the scope of the government. If you take Jefferson, who certainly believed he was smarter than Washington, and maybe he was, but he certainly thought he was. Jefferson's point about the federal government was, hey, it's going to grow naturally over time. You can't stop it. It's going to get bigger and bigger. And that's when he said the comments that he did about refreshing the Tree of Liberty and all of that stuff, that he felt like at some point the nation will have to deal with this in the future because it's just going to grow. And it has done that. I mean, you have this huge thing up there that's DC that's a gigantic thing that just wraps around the world trying to control everything that goes on with bloated beyond belief bureaucracy of the federal government. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody that, like John said, not political, that it has its own interest, and those may align, ideology sometimes with one party or the other, but it's its own thing and it wants to control now. And, the view of Jefferson was, well, at some point, if you enjoy freedom, then it'll be on you people in the future to deal with it. And I saw one of your chats here a little bit was, why should any law be different anywhere? Well, that's one reason why this country was set up that way, was to have states be primary in some ways so that you could have this cauldron of experiment, that you could have different cultures and different beliefs in different areas, and you wouldn't have just one spot, one city on an entire continent governing everything everybody does everywhere with no diversity of anything anywhere. But I do know there are a lot of people who wish there was one spot in the world like that anywhere you went on this globe, you were controlled by some group somewhere else that you could absolutely not affect in any way, because you basically can't affect the federal government. You can speak locally. What can you do against the federal government?
Look at the European Union.
That question is kind of like asking, why should we have different COVID policies in different parts of the country? It's because every place is a different place.
Joe, you had to go to COVID? It's YouTube. Thanks, buddy.
Joe lives.
Fine, that's enough.
That's where it is.
That's it.
COVID and Trump. That's where Joe lives.
That's it. No, my point is that laws should reflect the cultural attitudes of the people of the jurisdiction. And while we have, constitution that's designed to tell us this is a basic yardstick that we're going to apply as far as where we're going to allow government control and things of that nature, or having basic equality, that's our lowest common denominator. There'll be some states which want to go far beyond that, and others which want to go far below. But the same reason, and the people who live in the state of California are not even like the people of New York. It's a very different mindset, and the laws that should govern them are not going to be the same, and they're completely different from people who are living in Kentucky. So, and to have a healthy country, why is it that Californians should live by Kentuckian standards, or vice versa? It doesn't make any sense. So that's why federalism was such a brilliant institution, because it basically enabled states to decide within our parameters on things that are not going outside our state, that we're going to have jurisdiction here to decide things. And that's why we should be screaming for more local governments, not thinking and not less. It's that simple.
No, my two bulldogs have started snoring, so all the snorting sounds you might hear from the bulldogs.
We don't hear it, dude. You gotta.
I thought it was chilly.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was gonna say it's not me. It's the bulldogs. That's who I'm blaming. If you hear it, yeah. Anyway.
Well, it is a little bit past their bedtime.
Yeah, they just started snoring.
Well, I see some Annie Jefferson rhetoric going on in the chat. I can't really stand for it because I'm from Charlottesville. I was born at Martha Jefferson Hospital. And Jefferson was no combat veteran or whatever. However, you cannot deny the guy's intellect. You just cannot. And you can't deny his role in founding the country. I don't think you can. And nor can you, I think, overlook really the point that, on his tombstone at where he was buried, he did not put on there that he was president as one of his major accomplishments. And there was a message in that for the future.
True. Well, hey, while we're on founding fathers, what about the guy who walked away after 2 terms, which is an important precedent to everybody in the future?
George?
Because they wanted to make George king. Yes, they wanted King George. No, the people, they had a King George. They wanted their new King George. And it was so important that he did the job. And I forgot, he based it on a Roman emperor who did the same thing. I forgot his name.
It was Vespasian, but I could be wrong.
Okay, well, somebody in the chat's going to bail me out and tell me, but it was an emperor or somebody who he had read about, because they all had read literature the same way as we're not a democracy, we're a republic, because they were terrified of democracy and mob rule, etc. But
I'm also not saying
Cincinnatus.
Tiberius.
Cincinnatus, that's it. Cincinnatus.
I'm not saying Jefferson wasn't a racist, by the way.
Cincinnatus is the one that did the, swords into plowshares. I think Tiberius is the one that started the 2-term.
Tiberius? No. Tiberius came before. Anyway, no. Caligula. It was Cincinnatus.
Tiberius Caesar Augustus.
James Tiberius Kirk.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think that it's always interesting to me that I forget, you guys can remind me which amendment it was, but FDR was not even cold in his grave before they said, yeah, we're not doing more than 2 terms anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, he got 4 terms. If the guy didn't die, he would have had 16 years. He would have had a generation. Think about that for a second. He was headed to be an entire generation, one president, and that is anathema to what we're about. The problem I see the founding fathers had, though, is they actually never counted on the professional politician. For example, in Congress, it's only a 2-year term. Why? Well, because it was considered a hardship. The fact that you'd have to go to Congress and serve your country meant you had to spend time away from your land, your farm, whatever. That was a hardship. They're saying, look, we only need you to do it for 2 years, then you go back home and take care of your business. You're serving your country. They didn't count on, oh, no, I'm going to be a congressman for life.
Well, that's the thing I was thinking, like Utah's famous senator Orrin Hatch, who served for 50 freaking years in the Senate, he won his seat by running on a term limits platform.
Definition of irony.
Orrin Hatch ran on a term limits platform.
That's
And he
hilarious.
stuck around. He became the longest serving senator in freaking history.
But isn't that a pattern? Every congressperson, every senator runs against Congress or the Senate, and they say, I'm going to go up there and tell those bozos, blah, 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 blah. And what I love is they say it every re-election. And it's like, wait, you are one of those bozos. You've been one of those bozos now for how many terms?
Well, but
I have
here's
a really weird view of how
thing.
to do this. I think we should. I mean, it should just be done by appointment, not elections.
Well, that was the Senate. The Senate was appointment.
Yeah, go down a list of voters or the phone book or something and go, gee, Mr. Robine, I'm sorry, you have to go serve in Congress for the next little while.
Damn it! You know what? All right.
Ehrman, I'm sorry, your number's up. You have to be president for the next 4 years. You would get a lot more done because you have a farm to take care of, you have a business to run, you have a family to take care of, and you're not interested in maintaining your position. You want to be anywhere else other than in Washington, D.C. So you get the job done quickly and you
Here's
get
the
out.
aspect of it is once you are in, you're in. I mean, I think it's like 98% of incumbents get reelected.
Yes.
And it's because you have all of the levers of power in order to grease the wheels of your constituent base.
Not only that, it's cheap. Buying politicians, especially DAs, ask George Soros how little it costs to buy a DA election.
Thanks
It's
to
nothing.
Thanks to DeSantis, not quite so much in Florida anymore.
Oh, so you have one. Okay, well, you got the rest of the country, dude. So
I mean,
get busy.
it's my local district, so
I know.
I was very happy to see that occur.
But I have more super chats I need to definitely get through. Waves to Joe, I think. You're looking good. Hope all is going well. L'chaim. Sorry.
Didn't you watch Fiddler on the Roof? To lays a wolf. L'chaim.
Are you talking about the Mossad spy?
Was what he was?
No, it just came out after his death that he was a Mossad spy for much of his life.
Who was?
The lead in Fiddler on the Roof. He died relatively recently, I believe.
Really? He dated my grandmother.
Well,
what?
Yeah.
Was she the recruiter? Honeypot?
Wait, what? Have you? What? Chaim Topol dated your grandmother?
It's a long story.
All right.
Guess.
Well, yeah, it is a small.
Seriously.
It is a small community. I mean, keep that in mind. But all right, Gunner. In the UK, lots of kids with autism, ADHD, and depression were wrongly treated for gender dysphoria. They shut down the Central Gender Clinic. Yeah, good. I have heard that, and good. Colorado already signed minors transgender healthcare into law. They won't disclose location in a missing trans child's case if they seek healthcare. That's the problem we're talking about.
Somebody wrote The Spy Who Loved Joe's Gammy.
Love it.
That's good.
Theo
Model comes oil.
Theophrastus 3.0. I agree with this. These surgeries and drugs do not change their sex. It produces sterile humans with mutilated genitalia, and it cannot be reversed. Yes, that's true. Brian Manuel, I guess. Please let me have a mic and add me. I'll be glad to tell you exactly what's going to happen, but that's inflammatory speech. But I don't know, but the Jazz Jennings doesn't surprise me. I don't know if it's a he. Is Jazz now identifying as a he or she? I never even know. Anyway. All right. In the late 90s, there was an epidemic of mothers with Munchausen. I've said this forever, that I feel that the trans scenario is Munchausen's by proxy. I really feel that strongly because they get a benefit. Let me see. Muddy Water Senate report came out today. Chili or without beans? This is you, Good Logic. You, Joe. What?
With or without beans? I think that was clearly how's it chili without beans? I don't know what that means.
I don't know, but I guess you have dogs that are producing.
That's like saying Ireland without scotch. Like, what does that even mean?
You got me. I have such sights to show you. What? We are a republic? You mean like the Union of Socialist Soviet Republics, the People's Republic of China, the German Democratic Republic? Yeah. It might explain all the companies. Well, it is a funny thing, but they also are called democracies quite a bit. I think North Korea is a democracy, right, Jeff? Yeah, you're muted.
Yeah, no, I'm just shaking my head vigorously.
No, but isn't their name democracy? Like
any country on earth that has democratic people in their title is not a democratic.
That's
country.
the irony. Yes.
Yeah.
Including political parties.
Yeah, like democratic people of North Korea, the Republic of the Congo. Anyone that has the word democratic in their official government name is not. No.
I agree. All right. So
hell, South Korea is barely democratic.
What is?
By the way, Joe, did you just say Ireland without scotch? You realize?
Yes, he did.
He did. Probably.
Yeah.
No, you meant Ireland without whiskey, probably.
Yeah, it's the whiskey debater, the water of life.
There we go. Now I got a redhead to correct me on this. Go ahead.
Scotch comes from Scotland. It's right there in the name.
Yeah.
That's an alcoholic.
I get it.
Okay, so what else is going on in the lands of law? Lori Vallow, anybody following that? What's going on there?
It's insane, man.
You don't want to talk about you don't want to talk about Fox settlements?
Yeah.
What about it?
Do that.
All right, look, it's your show. You do what you got to do.
Oh, look at this. Look at this.
I
like Joe's passive aggressive. It's your show. Yeah, what are you gonna do?
It's your show. If you want to go down in flames, that's on you. I don't care.
What Fox made a settlement and it was probably stupid.
But the question has to be why? Why would they do this?
I don't know. Because
it's 50 cents on the dollar. Why,
Joe? It's
they didn't even appeal.
$787 million.
Billion. All right.
That's what I meant. Yeah, it's like $1 billion.
Gajillion.
Yeah. It's an incomprehensible amount of money.
Why wouldn't you appeal? Why wouldn't you try to appeal the summary judgment? Like, there's so many things here. Like this was such a confusing thing. I've been waiting to talk to some attorney about this.
So I'm gonna suggest something. Is they don't want to open their books, and there might be other things that might come out in discovery that.
They're done with discovery. They're on the eve of trial. Everything that they
done.
They turned over all their stuff
that morning.
And there's absolutely no damn reason.
Yeah, no, but John, to your point, Joe, sometimes you have a confidentiality order that's good up until trial, and then when you actually go into trial, that stuff starts coming out more, and it might have been the last minute leverage that if you don't want this stuff hitting the airwaves and being actual evidence in the trial where the public interest in knowing it is higher to override a prior confidentiality order, here's your last chance. I don't know, but I still wondered that too.
I was
going to say, Steve, aren't you shocked by the percentage and the dollar amount? And on top of that, it's not just the dollar amount. Yeah, but that's the thing. Here's the thing: even if you get a judgment, executing your judgment and getting half is almost miraculous. They have different business entities that's easy. The whole thing. It must be harder for them because they're such a massive company. But my point is that, what's the downside? What was the downside of going to trial on the money front? Understand this. This is what was so astonishing to me. Normally, when you enter into a settlement agreement, understand this, the apology that came from them, or the sort of half, we're acknowledging, kind of like walking that line, that was not something that one of them just decided, somebody in Fox's side, we're going to send out. That was part of the settlement agreement. That was crafted, negotiated, and every word in that was haggled over. We're going to phrase like this. We're going to phrase like that. We're going to put this line in. And go ahead,
see, that's the thing.
John looks like that kid who needs a bathroom. So go. Tell me, what is it you want?
No, here's the thing, Joe. All right, fine.
No. You have a
I'm gonna let
question.
that go.
I have a question. You want to.
I have a question, and my question is this. It's very straightforward. You're dealing with a Delaware jury.
That is an issue. What is the
So,
jurisdiction?
do you know what the downside risk of not settling is?
I don't know.
They nail you to the fucking wall.
I think you're right. I think, John, you're right.
Is Delaware that left wing? I mean,
no, it's not only
It's Joe Biden's state, dude.
It is absolutely corrupt as all heck.
We
have the same judges and the same elite law firms going in and out of the same positions, and this is why everybody incorporates there.
Well, and look, I mean, you have what their annual earnings.
Half their GDP is freaking corporate settlements.
Yeah, it's all that is. Yeah, but Fox News has an annual earnings of well over $2 billion a year. This settlement at most represents 1/3 of an annual earnings, and they just get to give the general, "We're sorry, we said things that were unfactual." They avoid Tucker Carlson sitting down and go,
how much did Sandman settle for?
But no, what I'm saying is
let me finish
here. Let me finish here. But they have also avoid the bad press. They avoid the negative press of having to have each person. Tucker Carlson doesn't have to sit down and go, "Hi, I'm Tucker Carlson. I lied. I'm a despicable human being, and I can't be bothered to tell the truth. And I just spout inflammatory garbage all day long." They avoided doing that. They avoided bad PR by just giving up 1/3 of 1 year's salary, annual earnings.
Did they also have a potential punitive damages exposure? Not as part of the original claim, Joe, because you're saying 50 cents on the dollar, but did they have potential punitive damages thing on top of that? Because with the whole Alex Jones thing, you never know if you're going to get $1 billion thing, although Delaware probably has a cap.
You're the first person to bring up that point, and I think that's a very salient point. I think that's a great point. That changes the entire equation dramatically. If in fact Delaware has an allowance for punitive damages, and I understand
damages are allowable in defamation cases in the state of Delaware.
Are they?
But
so,
again,
that changes the equation. But I want to point this out. When I asked the question, I was asking how much did Salmon settle for? The point I was making is this. Normally we don't.
Salmon didn't settle in Delaware, Joe.
Let me make my point. You don't even know my point.
Fair enough.
Point I was making is the public never hears the number.
Confidentiality in the settlement agreement.
Why is there not confidentiality here? Because they want, that was part of this, that the public should hear this number is part of this. Normally there would be confidentiality. Normally normally you're buying a non-disclosure agreement for your $700 million agreement for your $700 million, and no one would know what that number is. This is something that the parties basically decided, we want the public to know this number. That's a very odd thing. That's a very, very, very odd thing to happen. It should make a lawyer question and say, why is this happening here when we almost never, in a public defamation case that gets settled, we almost never, ever, ever hear the number. And we didn't just hear this number, we heard an astronomical number. And to me, that should make you ask yourself a question.
3 things.
How did we hear this? And how is there this apology on top of that? This is a very, very unusual circumstance. And the more you deal, and I think someone like Southern Law, would you not agree with me that it's very unusual for the settlement number to become public? But
that's part of the settlement, Joe, isn't it? I mean, they obviously, as part of it, they said, no, you're going to say that you paid this money, or we're not settling. I don't know.
No, that's definitely possible.
But I agree with Joe. You don't want people to know it because because look at everybody out there who's watching the Fox News, see if they lie about them, has heard this gigantic number. It's definitely a feature of the negotiation. Certainly.
I don't know.
Jeff, go, Jeff.
Yeah, four things. One, I mean, David Forsyth said saying Tucker Carlson never once claimed Dominion did anything wrong. Stop repeating. I just used him as an example. If they would have been found guilty in one, I mean, every single one of them would have had to sit down and go,
it was Lou Dobbs and Maria Bartiromo.
We suck. We work for a horrible news organization that lies and tells things. They avoided all of that. But one, Joe is correct. The fact that they had to, 1, disclose the amount to begin with, and 2, disclose a huge amount, and 3, there was no no liability, no admission of fault clause in this settlement agreement tells you how badly Fox really blew this whole story from day one. That tells you how horrible that story was from day one.
But it also doesn't tell it only
and this
tells
was the best
us,
thing they could get out of it.
but it also tells. I want to be clear.
It's not.
One way this is being paraded through the public that is completely inaccurate is it doesn't tell us anything about what happened in November 2020. It simply tells us that, because there was like basically 15 different allegations as to like sources. I'm going to be very, very careful. Don't worry. I'm wary of your channel's protection here. There are 15. The nature of different claims about what happened in November was in 15 different ways. And Fox picked one specific way that they said this is what happened, and that Dominion was responsible. And there was no way, even if there was accuracy in the nature of that claim, the fact that Dominion was the one pulling the strings rather than someone else pulling the strings was ridiculous. They just made this up, and that's what made it so defamatory. If they even would have couched it as the system that's being implemented here is so easily hackable by people who are interested in people who have levers of power to hack it. It's just not even hacking it. It's embedded in the system. You don't have to say that anyone in Dominion was involved.
They went specific.
You mean vulnerable. You could say it's vulnerable.
It's even not just vulnerable, but that Katie Hobbs is in charge, and Katie Hobbs is the one who makes the settings on this thing, and that's the system that Dominion has created. Now it's not about Dominion, and now Dominion can't sue you. It was so stupid in the way it was phrased that they were begging for a lawsuit. And my point is, it doesn't tell us anything about what happened in November 2020. What it tells us is that Fox was stupid in how they presented this story. And it also, by the way, I do want to tip my cap to Dominion's attorneys, who their complaint was a masterpiece. It was really, and it was a very difficult complaint to draft. And that thing is longer than any of the first two Harry Potter books. Literally, the complaint itself was 400 pages.
Wow.
It's astonishing, but it was so well crafted and set up from top to bottom that I look at it and I admire the legal work. It's great legal work, and I like that you enjoy
and even scanning it, even just scanning briefly through it like I did. You went, these guys, they probably deserve $1.6 billion.
Yeah.
Where they're only $100 million a year revenue company. That's how clearly they painted the picture of what happened to them.
Yeah. So, but that's what we learned. What we learned was that Fox was incompetent in phrasing the story the way they did without knowing anything about it. But it doesn't tell us anything about what actually happened in November, even though I think a lot of the media wants us to say, you see, it's all wrapped. So there you go. I was careful. I was good, right, Eric? I was good.
You were. Let me get a super chat into
go ahead.
An amuse bouche. Eunuch porn writers, academics are credited with assisting the WPATH SOC. Brett Cooper did a deep dive on tragic adult life first transgender child. I'm not sure about all that, but somebody did request this, and I don't know anything about it. But what about QAnon shaman raising money to sue the government and with the remaining funds to go to, I guess,
that actually might go somewhere.
What, you guys follow it? Know anything? I don't know anything about it.
Very broadly, I have not followed it specifically, but I think that the argument is that it was an unjust prosecution. I don't know if that goes anywhere. Probably not. But that's my understanding of what the claim is.
Well, that Tucker Carlson, that was a good side of Tucker, because he can be credited with getting Jacob Chamsley or whatever his name is out.
Yeah, it's Jake Chamsley, and I think part of it's going to be, he was being unjustly held, and there is a civil claim there under the Civil Claims Courts Act because it is a federal agency. And if they actually misrepresented the evidence, which it seems like from Tucker's investigation they may have, it's not. I would say that it's not quite Brady, but it's very darn close in terms of not turning over that evidence to his defense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looked awful.
I don't know how it's not Brady. If you tell me it's not quite Brady, Yeah, I think you're being too generous. I don't know how that's not a direct Brady violation.
I would like to say that it is, but I'm trying to be a little careful.
Yeah. No, that you're probably wiser than I am in that respect, because I will foray out there and I'll say, to me, this looks like a classic Brady violation.
Well, and the issue is that the Brady violation triggers the Torts Claims Act. So he does potentially have a case against the government.
Great point. Yeah. Yeah, it is.
All right. So what else is going on? Lori Vallow. God, yeah, Joe didn't want to talk about Lori Vallow. Now he has to suffer.
There we go. Do it.
Who's following now? What's going on? I'm curious.
You can't summarize that. You cannot summarize that case. It is so deep. It is so twisted. There's so much going on. It's an absolutely insane case involving a bunch of psychopaths doing really indescribable things. And I mean, that's just a thing. I mean, that's the way it is. I mean, there's really no way to describe what's happening in that trial. It is an absolute nightmare all the way around.
Is it being streamed at all, or is somebody having to?
They're streaming the audio. They release the audio the next evening. So like Thursday's audio is released Friday evening. And there's a lot of reasons why they think that may be the case. I kind of agree with it. It's a very, very Mormon community, and this case involves like and I mean just growing up in the area, being being raised Mormon and whatnot myself, I can see this where it involves like some discussions of really deep Mormon doctrine by a group that was so far out on the fringe that they were excommunicated in the hundreds in this area. They just went rogue, and so it's this weird. We're Mormon, but we've been excommunicated, and we're all this case and these doctrines and
hold on. You had
and
that
all this
with,
stuff revolves around this.
You had that with Warren Jeffs. I mean, there's lots of those Jack Mormon and these sects that are out
but the Warren Jeffs thing, I mean, that's just like they disagreed on the issue of polygamy and went rogue and said, we want polygamy. But this is like involved in like this group is saying that they were told by God to create a separate branch of the LDS church that involves portals and zombies, and I mean just absolute insanity.
Shouldn't that be exposed? Shouldn't that be revealed?
But I think it's like because of this weird kind of blending of actual doctrine with rogue doctrine, which just and complete psychosis. The church leadership actually just kind of went. I think they went in and said, "Can we just not have this publicized live?"
I hate that. That feels to me like the worst kind of censorship. It's like we're trying to protect a religion or something. No, bullshit. That should be out there. And if it has nothing to do with the core religion, then they should be saying, yeah, put it out there. These are whack jobs, nothing to do with us. We want it exposed. I don't agree with that. That doesn't make sense.
I don't either, but I mean that's kind of seems to be what it had. I mean, I mean, Idaho has a huge Mormon population. The judge in this case, he's a Mormon bishop, which would be the equivalent of a parish priest. And they call them like wards or the parishes, and the stakes are the diocese. So there'd be like 3 of parishes in this one diocese, and the judge is one of these. The parish priest, essentially. So he knows all of the information about the private lives of the people involved, and it's a really, really odd thing. It's almost like an entire religion's doctrine is on trial, and not the fact that some psycho woman went and deleted her children in the most horrific ways imaginable, so that she could get with. I mean. The trail of bodies in this case is indescribable. Husbands died. Her new husband's ex-wife died mysteriously. I mean, the children are dead. There is a trail of bodies around these people that believed in zombies, and they were going to. It's crazy. It's one of these things that if you haven't followed it from the beginning, there is no way of playing catch up. Danny on Direct she's doing her live streams every day, and she does the best the best explanations and the best summaries as it goes along. I would recommend that anybody who's interested in it that they watch Danny on direct stream. She's doing an amazing job of covering this.
Okay, how about the OnlyFans murder case? What's up with that? Is that coming up soon?
Courtney Clenny.
That one.
She did just get sued.
Yeah,
I read that lawsuit, and that was
the family.
interesting.
I think she was supposed to have her preliminary hearing on the 16th or something like that.
You guys have any thoughts on that case or what's going on? I mean,
She's going to jail.
Yeah. Yeah.
all right. Well, that was a nice subject. Okay, so
It's pretty cut and dry for her.
I mean, the audio of it is pretty. It's like it's right up there with listening to Amber Heard audio. It makes.
I'd say
sends
it's a
chills
little
down your
worse.
spine.
I don't like Amber, but she didn't kill anyone.
Well, I mean,
It
she
both send
said
chills
she-
down your spine.
So what do you think
She
about
said
this,
she
though? What do you
threw
think
that
about
guy.
this? I read the civil case, and the large part of it is suing all these organizations, security, condo. They're saying that the condo place did not provide adequate security. My view is he had a right to be there. She had a right to be there. They're behind closed doors. She kills him. What the hell does the condo association security have to do with it other than cutting a check?
That goes nowhere.
Yeah, that seems it's money. Who has the deepest pocket? She doesn't. She doesn't have her gig anymore. So they're going after wherever they think there might be money.
But my view
opinion.
is that legal theory is right in the crapper.
Yeah.
Anybody disagree with that one?
No.
Are you saying you wouldn't take that on contingency?
Yeah. How would you like to be Fox's? How would you like to be Fox's lawyer? Oh, okay, for a third of the recovery for $25 million or whatever, $250 million. Yeah, well, I think you guys should settle.
At some point, you get to the point where you can just roll the dice, and it's like, you know what? If we get a third, we get a third. That's okay.
All right.
Yeah,
Well,
Courtney Clenny's going down. But see, I mean, what's the point? What's the point of suing her civilly? She's never getting out of jail. She's never making another dime. It's just a formality. That
Wait, you mean you can't do OnlyFans while you're in jail?
You probably can.
she's got to survive. It's just
She's got to get money out of it somehow.
Well, on that note, try to keep these around 90 minutes or so. I have a subtle hint on the screen if people want to check that out.
What's that subtle hint?
It's over by you, Jeff. But I don't know. People might recognize a little something there. If you don't mind, consider subscribing to the channel. If you like these legal panels, I am doing them every Friday now, and pretty consistently. Never know who's going to show up. Nate couldn't make it today. He thought he was going to be here. He's not. Have other people like Viva Fry will come on quite a lot, etc.
Nick
Please consider. Nick Recato was here last week and the week before. Just really, really stellar folks. Good conversation. And Joe shows up too sometimes. And we have a good time. I also do shorts on this channel. If you hate shorts, that's fine. There's a short shelf. You can never look at them and ignore them. If you like shorts, I'm very proud of what I'm doing. I think they're great shorts. Please consider checking them out. And what is everybody doing, starting with John?
So we have the Alvin Bragg back and forth with Jim Jordan. I wanted to wait a little bit, so we had the full week's worth of back and forth. And so I'm probably going to be doing that tomorrow in terms of what are the congressional powers and why the Southern District of New York, which is not a particularly right-wing organization, decided that to tell Alvin Bragg to go, beat Sands. So that'll probably be a little bit fun tomorrow. But otherwise, I still have to do the copyright stuff. I'll get to it at some points. This week's been a little bit tough for me, but otherwise, that's kind of the stuff that I do is kind of more deep dives into federal court.
All right, I'm going to jump in really quickly, Steve. I saw this just came in. I hate it when I find out afterward that I missed a super chat or somebody's letting me know, and it drives me nuts. Both parties defamed the company. Our elections equipment manufacturers went after one. I don't belong to a party, but those actions are concerning. Not sure. Maybe they went after deeper pockets or easier case. I don't know. And let me check for Rumble rants actually while I'm doing this, because nope, no Rumble rants.
They have every right to do that because it is, collective. So just because one did it and another didn't, you didn't go after one, and that doesn't change the calculus.
Okay, so now Steve, sorry about that.
So if you want to know about the dumb Courtney Clinty lawsuit, I got a video on that. If you want to know what Sarah Boone wants to tell you, I put up her latest letter. She can't put you in a suitcase, but she can assault you in her letter. And the Waukesha County Clerk's Office is sending me the final judgment of conviction on Darrell Brooks. So for the people who still want to see that, and he's an algorithm favorite, I will actually have that because I haven't seen it anywhere else. So I called the clerk and have him sending me a copy of it, and we'll see what actually he sentenced to and what the real deal is.
All right. And Jeff, what do you have going on?
Oh, okay. Well, gee, coming up in just 7.5 hours from now. Yeah, 7.5 hours from now. It's kind of a Friday law news roundup. We've got some Baldwin to rant about. We're going to be talking about Cleopatra on Netflix. Taylor Shabusiness, my ride or die girl.
Yes.
Or emphasis on the die part of the girl. We got some Taylor Shabusiness news coming up. What else do we have? Some other stuff. Taylor Shabusiness, Courtney Clinty. Oh, yeah, Alec Baldwin and Elon Musk. He's had a couple of big blows here. He lost a $3 billion rocket ship yesterday, and Twitter's going nuts. We're going to be talking about that. Some other.
The verification stuff. I just I'm putting out a short on that. Did you know that all the verification has been taken away unless you're Stephen King, William Shatner, or LeBron James, and Elon's paying for them out of his own pocket?
What a troll. I love him. He's great. We're going to be talking about that and some other societal issues, some based issues. We'll be having some guests, maybe, possibly. And then we're just going to be doing some stuff during the rest of the next week. Maritime Monday's coming up. We got some cool stuff lined up with Maritime Monday shows for the next 6 weeks. Every Thursday's OJ, and we do other stuff in between. Legal vices. That's
awesome. Joe.
I'm Good Logic. You can find me on the YouTubes. I'm also on the Rumbles. I'm on Locals, and everywhere. It's Good Logic. It's really very simple. It's spelled Lawgic, like you see below. I really recommend the Rumbles because that'll at least help you find me everywhere. You can sign up to me on YouTube, and you'll probably get unsigned at some point in the near future. But I the reason I was hitting you on the whole Dominion Fox thing is because I wanted to bounce off of you guys. I had a cool new theory that I think is explosive, that you really about this whole settlement thing, that's what led me to actually bring up that thing in the first place. And if you just allow me to walk you through this theory, I think that I want to get your feedback on this because this is blow your mind. It's gonna freaking just
Okay, Joe.